After this video, you'll turn into a silent Sigma. Hello, dear friend. Many people think that effective speaking skills are the most important key to persuading other people. Yes, they are partly right at some point, but there is something that is overlooked. Silence, sometimes speaking less, can be more impressive and more functional than speaking. Speaking effectively, speaking incredibly well. In this video, I want to talk to you about what makes it useful and powerful to be silent. To be silent sometimes, to speak a little. I would describe it as a white, innocent manipulation technique. Now, where does it work? Where does it make us powerful? Silence is basically always important in bilateral relationships. Talking is a way to prove something to the other party. That is, in such a relationship, the other party does not feel that they exist in that relationship. You talk, you explain, and you say, the better I tell him, her about that subject, the better that person will know that subject, the more he, she will be impressed by me. You think that the key is how well I explain it. But this is never the key in real relationships. In real relationships, what makes you feel good and impresses the other person is actually this. If I am the person in front of you, how much do I care? How much am I listened to in this communication? How seriously does the other person take me? You say, but I take you seriously. I do this, I do that. No, that doesn't work. If you remain silent and listen to the other person with full attention, then you know what happens. The other person feels very valuable, and you have influenced the other person at that moment. People who talk too much, they start talking about things they shouldn't talk about things they somehow don't really know. And in every area where you talk, you open that part of yourself and show it to the other person. When you talk about things that you are not full enough, the other person will see inside you. He will know, and he may think, what an empty man, what an empty woman. When this happens, you should know this. If you talk too much, the effect on the other side starts to deteriorate. But if you speak less, and mostly prefer to keep silent, people think that what they do not see is full. So here, while creating your personal image, you should never talk about what you don't know. You should not jump on every subject. That silent image there is incredibly impressive. As I said, people tend to see you as mysterious, charismatic, and more powerful in such a situation. If you don't ramble, but at the same time, when you talk less, or when you are silent like this, other people tend to interpret you as a wise person. When you look around, for example, there are documentaries about cults. They are also on Netflix. You can watch them. There is a documentary about Osho. There is something very remarkable in that documentary. Sometimes he does a silent fast for a week, and there are days when he doesn't leave his room. Now, at that moment, as a psychologist, I observe his gestures when I am not tired. I realized that when he is empty, he is not very mature. He is a man running after his desires. I observe this because I am a psychologist. But if you are around him and he doesn't speak, he shuts down. He becomes silent. He just listens. He looks at you with a smile. You explain. You explain excitedly. You try to convince him, but he looks at you. He doesn't comment. After a while, there is a tendency to interpret the person who does not speak as someone who is incredibly wise, incredibly deep, and sometimes even has supernatural powers. Of course, we do not aim to create such an effect. But if you want to impress people, and if you want to achieve this wise appearance, sometimes it is very useful to prefer not to speak a little bit. Sometimes, even just to look at them with a smile. There is something we call therapist silence. This is actually a method we use for the other party to go deeper, to open himself, herself. Many people talk about silence, but when they are exposed to silence in an obvious way, they feel very uncomfortable. Interestingly, we have such a discomfort. Almost all people feel this discomfort. So, where does the therapist use silence? Let's say she is telling an event to the client. In fact, it is a very impressive, troubling, traumatic event, but he thinks that it is not a very important event and reflects it to me in that way. I ask her, "How did this event affect you?" The other person says, "It didn't affect me at all." At that moment, in this environment, there is silence. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. And at that moment, the discomfort starts to appear. Because I remain silent, the other party says, "There is something different here. I should say more." And at that moment, he forces himself to tell. In fact, the person who is not willing to tell at first feels obliged to open up more. In this way, we can more easily gain access to the emotions that he or she does not express. This sometimes occurs in job interviews. What happens, for example? The other party asks you a question and you give an answer. The other party remains silent. You feel so uncomfortable that you want to give more. You want to tell more. Here, you can use this method in your daily life, especially with people you want to get to know. I ask a question, and 15 to 20 seconds of silence. It won't kill anyone, but it will certainly create more motivation for the other person to explain himself, herself. On the other hand, there is something like this. People who talk a lot about their goals and dreams are usually people who take little action. So, do these people talk a lot because they take little action? Or do they talk a lot because they don't take action in life? I think the second part, that is, they don't take action because they talk too much. People who talk a lot about their dreams, especially when they talk about them, even when they tell people around them, "I will do this, I will go here, I have such and such dreams," they actually experience a certain sense of excitement and satisfaction. And people who experience this feeling do not feel motivated to experience the anxiety or the difficulty required to reach the reality of the work afterwards. Therefore, we can say the following. People who talk less, who do not talk about their goals and plans, are more successful at the point of action in real life. Therefore, you should talk less or keep quiet about your goals and dreams. I think this will be helpful. Another area where we can use silence effectively is when someone asks you a question. Let's say someone asks you a question and you can't come up with a very impressive result with your answer to that question. In such a situation, before answering that question, you are perceived as much more effective and valuable than the previous version, i.e., the version in which you answer immediately when you think and say, "I think about it like this," after a 15-second silence, with a confident stance, without taking your eyes off the other person. Therefore, it may be useful to use the 15-second silence when giving an answer in the beginning. When trying to influence other people, we can say that the words you actually use and your score for being taken seriously are inversely proportional. The more words you use to describe an issue, the more you feel the need to explain yourself, the less the other party will value you. Therefore, you need to learn to be economical when expressing yourself. If you express yourself with fewer words and less waste, the other party will value your words and personality more. Thank you for listening to me, beautiful person. Be very good to yourself. If I have added something to you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. If you want a topic for the next video, You can specify it in the comments. See you soon.